So I hope you had a good lunch. And this is what a nice topic to start off after lunch. Can't get a better topic than incident response, right? 1 minute, let me just sit. Yeah. So I have a very good panel with me here. Post the introductions have been done. So without further ado, we'll get into the thing. Incident response, one of the big bugbears, and of course, an important strategy for cyber resilience. And that's something that everybody is excited to know what's coming next, because as risks go, there are two sides. One is the mitigation, everything you do to prevent the risks from happening. And the second one is contingency. Where are your fire extinguishers, escape stairways, and everything, in case the risks does manifest, okay? So in the NIST cycle also, you will see that detect, okay, and respond are important components. So this is nothing out of the way. We should treat it as a part and parcel of the strategy. And in fact, the governments and everyone else also, they want you to have a very solid plan in place, okay? So how do we go about it? Everyone has their views, and of course there are many good guidelines out there, but nothing like hearing it from the industry practitioners on what the current trends are, what the future is, what are the good elements of an incident response strategy, okay? So of course now even our government certain has given directives, not just guidelines, they are directives, okay? Which means that someone doesn't follow them, they'll get a note of love from the government pretty soon. So the point is that if there is an incident response, there are various strictures out there saying that within 6 hours you need to report the incident, you need to have passed 6 months, 180 days of logs there, and what kinds of incidents are there, some 20 kinds they have specified, pretty detailed guidance I should say, okay? And for VPNs and all these things, some of them can be argued even conflict with the privacy laws, that they are retaining all the details like email ID, phone numbers, everything related to the consumers, and also the VPN related ones that have to be stored for at least 5 years. So given all these things, whatever may be our views, but of course those are the things that need to be followed. Now coming to the incident response, of course there are various things that are there. Assert CIRT, okay, Computer Incident Response Plan. It is almost a what you call a very, very good practice to have, almost mandatory in every organization, okay, or decent sized organization should have a CIRT in place. And of course there should be playbooks there, playbooks for different types fully, like for example one for ransomware, one for ransomware attack, one for maybe phishing, email phishing attack, one for data breach, and also on, and people need to be trained. So I'll get started off first with Ramesh, Babu. Yes. On what do you feel are the key drivers or motivators for having a good incident response plan? What are the imperatives? Go ahead, speak.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Thank you for inviting me for this panel discussion. So, as everybody knows, this incident response, it is having very critical role now. I think this is the decade. Incident response is more important than any other thing. Earlier we are worrying about detecting any attacks, all those things. And before that it was only preventing we were more concentrating. Now response is going to take my main stage. So a lot of solutions are there for that. Security, particularly this is a it should be a process. It is not only tools, it should be a process involving with the people. So then only it will be a complete solution. Because of this incident response, as you know, if an incident strikes any organization, how difficult for that organization to face the ramifications. There are so many effects will be there on the company, particularly their brand will be affected, whatever company it may be. there will be so many supervisory regulatory fines will be there. With the customers, it will affect their image, their business will be affected because of that. All these ramifications will be there. So right incident response plan is mandatory for any organization, particularly in this digital era. So that is the main.
Yes, absolutely. So it's in 2022, the cost of a data breach was estimated by IBM with some $4.35 million. Okay, if that isn't motivator enough, I don't know what is. The second thing is that a key thing is that it takes about 127 days to even detect an incident or breach. After that, probably a little more time to remediate that. So I'd like to pose this question, same question again, the imperatives for having a strong incident response plan in place. Neeraj from Optum. Yeah.
Dr. Sriram, as you have mentioned that the cost of...
Everyone here?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. I hope you can hear me now. So as Dr. Sriram was mentioning, the cost of incident in the recent times as published by IBM is huge, and it's increasing every year, the trend. The cost of even a single incident is even a single breach, let's say one data item for one member, if that is breached, that is also increasing because the data protection and data privacy awareness is increasing in each of the geography. With respect to that, there are two things which are very important. As our attackers or as the organizations who are attacking or who are creating these incidents for ransomware, they are becoming very advanced. They are mostly financially backed up. Many times geopolitical financial backup is there. And they have a completely aligned objective with respect to their gains that they want to do through ransomware. So the organizations who want to prevent it, who need to protect their data, needs to be ahead of this curve. And we can be ahead of this curve only through resiliency, building resiliency in each of the underlying system, as well as agility. As Dr. Sriram mentioned, it takes around 127 days to detect a breach or an incident or an intruder in our systems. That detection cycle, if it is reduced by bringing agility, by bringing regular tracking or monitoring of systems, so that we know that some systems are behaving abnormally. And once we know that, then we can actually identify and prevent it from, or contain the impact if not prevent it. And that can happen if our systems are resilient, so that we can minimize the impact. We can control the effect of the incident that happened. Generally, one incident is not a siloed or isolated thing. It's a link to bigger things. So as soon as we are able to identify an incident and contain it, we can see it as if we are preventing a bigger breach from happening. That's very important in my view.
Thank you. Yeah, good points really. Okay, so that I'd like to complete the whole round. Okay, yes, Kishan, what are your thoughts on this? What are the main imperatives for a strong incident response plan?
A couple of things which I want to say. Like, see, every organization will have an incident response plan and all. They will follow that. But I suggest the KRAs for the people who are going to do that should be defined. Starting from board level till maybe from a legal team, from a corporate communication. So if anything happens, so you will be able to update the people properly that what is the status, and you will be able to contain. Along with that, as rightly mentioned, 127 days to report an incident, which is, or a detect an incident, it's a too long time. So we should increase the awareness inside the people. Like normally what happens, the guys, the IT guys only, if something happens and if they see the abnormalities, they normally don't report it to us. So that needs to be increased. So if that small incident can become a bigger incident to the whole organization, that's one of the. Plus, you should be aware about what are your crown jewels, and the solutions which are deployed in your environment should be properly deployed. Otherwise, you take any technologies, and if it is not deployed in the organization properly, because I have seen people take the solutions, they only run it with the default configuration. With the default configuration, it's quite good. I'm not saying that it's bad, but according to your environment, you have to configure the solution. So you will be able to detect the incidents more often. Will be able to prevent, and then the response plan will come there. Now the certain guidelines has been come there. You have to report any incident happening in your organization within 6 hours. Now that's a practical challenge which we will see it, but that's the guidelines which will always you will get that. And so these kind of guidelines will increase the security of an organization, which I believe to see that. So these are the points which I wanted to make.
Good, thank you all. Yeah, Alok.
I think I should be audible. So whatever my colleagues have mentioned, my different panelists over here, I would say I take the pleasure of being on the other side. I mean, like, I'm sitting on the other side as an observer, and in cybersecurity domain, we do a lot of work in this space, and we see a lot of organizations coming and asking for help when there is an incident. So like, I'll not repeat, but some of the pointers that was mentioned, it's only a matter of when. I mean, how much ever you spend on this, on improving the security posture, at some point of time you should be prepared that something may come and hit you. So I would typically suggest there are certain frameworks and guidelines. Not everybody has to reinvent the wheel. There is something called NIST 861R2. Follow the guidelines over there. Have a CSRP program, which is a cyber incident response plan. What is important is, cumulatively, if I have to mention 2 or 3 takeaways, please put that plan and exercise that plan as a tabletop or simulation exercise for the key executives and the stakeholders in the organization. A lot of times I've seen some organizations who want to pay ransomware, though we don't advise, but then we have seen examples where somebody wants in Bitcoin certain amount of payment, but then who is going to approve that at that point of time? And there is a consensus, but then there is no consensus who is the approval authority. All right, so these are kind of things we advise organizations to brainstorm. Certain, like rightly mentioned, is something which I think compared to European certain their counterparts, American certain the counterparts, there is some more clarity needed. But then if you look at those, at least the direction is there of our government to go in the right way. All right. The reason why certain has come up with the guidelines is they want to collect data across all organizations in India, assimilate and see what pattern is emerging. During COVID time, we saw a lot of supply chain attacks happening in India, Pharma, globally Pharma. But then how do you make sure that there is information sharing which is happening in the community, so that if you face something, the other party should be able to prevent it? And that can only happen if you have umbrella framework like certain which comes in. And in context of that, I think having the plans, cybersecurity incident response playbooks, and doing tabletop exercises always keep somebody on the knees and on the toes, sorry. And there are a lot of organizations, I would say, in especially Western world, who are mandatorily doing it every 6 months or 1 year as an annual exercise. So I think that's something we should look at.
Yes, certainly. Very good practices here. Of course, this is the best practices meet, and it's all about, the theme is about security consolidation this time around. So, of course, keeping in line with that, we would like to know what are the good elements, the key elements of a good incident response plan, and how should one shape it? Of course, automation is going to play a huge role now, because as we've seen that you need to detect early, you need to also report very early, okay? And also you need to have your act in place. You should already have gone through all the cyber drill exercises, tabletop exercises, and your awareness trainings and all, not just for some people of the organization, but everyone, not just the developers, not just the technical system administrators and all, but across the length and breadth of the organization, including finance, HR, everyone in fact who's holding sensitive data should be given more training. Okay, so even the ordinary employee also, if he compromises the network, then of course it will spread like wildfire.
Yeah. A good incident response plan, maybe every organization will be having that, but in practice, it will be in books only. In implementation, there will be a lot of challenges of a good incident response plan, what I feel. So particularly the team who are responsible, roles and responsibility to be clearly defined, and they should be involved in all these incident response activities. That should be regularly, it should be conducted, these activities, and there should be a proper training to the people. And not only particularly in a finance kind of organization, it is not a central office cannot ensure that security is there. It is all the branch offices. We are having 10,000 plus branches. This awareness should be percolated down to all the levels, not only employees, even to the customers. That is the major challenge in the cyber security particularly. That's what my feeling. And this awareness to be done at a not only at one organization that responsibility, it is whole industry has to put that efforts to create the awareness across. And this incident response plan, what I told as early, we are implementing a lot of solutions. Even our Kishan is also mentioning a lot of solutions. We are not deriving the value. We are implementing, and even the vendors will leave us there. And there won't be any optimization or improving the value out of that solutions. That's what we observe. So that we need to continuously engage that, and proper resources should be allocated. See, this mainly the problem is when you are implementing a solution, there should be a resource who is having knowledge in operating those solutions. That is where we are finding difficulty also. So these are all some of the challenges. If all these challenges be able to address, that will be a good IRP, incident response plan, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. That's certainly important points. Some of the key elements which you mentioned. Now, what would you say, Neeraj?
In addition to what we have heard from my panelists, what I really feel is when the things are going normal, in the normal state of the organization, we should be preparing for the tough times as an ant prepared for collecting food in the winters. And that how that is done is, as Aloke was mentioning, by doing tabletop. We should also be doing attack surface mapping to detect what is happening in our systems, and if there is any action that we need to take, rather than just depending on users who may not be able to identify whether this is an incident happening or is it maybe our systems will give us a trigger faster than people. We should also be building the system resiliency in these times through AI and ML. We have lots of inputs within the organizations, like the data from the past incidents, lots of reports from our systems. So using AI ML for identifying those patterns, and then identifying which systems are vulnerable and fixing those vulnerabilities to build resiliency at this time. And in case an incident still happens, because that is what will happen to any organization sometime or the other, in case that happens, we should know what would be our action. Every employee should be aware of, and many times this awareness needs to go beyond the employees. Recently there was a news item on one of the national business channel that an equity company from India, the shareholders' accounts were hijacked by some people on the same day, and that the shareholders were calling the equity company, and the company response was that you might have shared your password. Rather than acting on those issues, they were deflecting it on the customers, and by the key time is lost in this. So it was realized that the company, equity company, was not very prepared to handle an incident, even though customers were very aware. So awareness at all levels in the entire supply chain is very important. Wherever there will be a weak link, a threat can emerge from there only. And identifying those weak links, if we need to take support from expert organizations, if we don't have it within the organization, maybe let's say for in this example, if the incident response needed to be outsourced, they could have done that. That okay, we are a share broker, that is not our expertise, but then there is, if ransomware as a service can be there, then security as a service is also there in the organization. So we should seek services wherever we think those are lacking in our organization. So building that entire chain of protection, layered security is very important at all the times.
Yes, very valuable inputs, of course, that we need to have a strong plan in place, should do all the tabletop exercises and also be prepared for attacks and all. So just to get into that, the nature of attacks nowadays is such that in a ransomware attack, those fellows have done preparation for months. They have laid the groundwork, if not years, and depending on which organization they're attacking. And prior to the attack, they have already siphoned out all the information data. That's one. The second thing is what they do is they infect the servers and the DR so that the moment they declare an incident, data cannot be recovered. I mean, you cannot use a backup and continue with business as normal. Okay, so they infect and then they bring down the DR sites very silently. And then they launch the attack on a certain date, which is close to the weekend probably. So you have very little time to recover and respond if you are not prepared with that already. So then they would declare that, yes, there is a large scale this thing ransomware, you pay up so many bitcoins. Now, if you don't have a plan in place, people are in a state of panic because there is ransomware demanded. Do you have a cyber insurance plan in place? Do you have a proper DR in place, very robust DR in place? And after that, how are you going to handle the media, the customers? How are you going to handle, negotiate with the people who are the hackers? And then how are you going to pay? So, because cyber insurance, many a time, the amount which cyber insurance, the insurance company gives is used to pay off the ransomware money. Okay. So that's what it is used for. And there are certain guidelines behind it. So if you have not been following some of the guidelines, let's say what CERTIN has laid out or other things which are there, the insurance company will back off and say, no, you didn't do your job properly, so I will not pay. So all these things need to be put in place well beforehand. Okay, assuming that something bad is going to happen. And after that, the negotiation, I've received so many calls. I mean, the negotiation may be in bitcoins typically. And from India, is it legal to pay bitcoins towards this? It's not. So somewhere from Singapore or somewhere else, it needs to be paid off. The money needs to be paid off. And then the money needs to be exchanged. So all these need to be taken into account. And the stakeholders will be very unforgiving if we do not have a proper plan in place. And on top of it, there's a loss of reputation to deal with. There is the customers to handle. There is the loss of business operations which are there. And of course, the future contracts and business may get affected. All of these things are tied to an incident. So with this, I'd like to ask Kishan about how, what do you feel are the elements of a good incident response plan for a very good, robust plan? Yeah.
A couple of things which I want to mention. Nowadays, threat landscape is increasing like anything. And the hackers are always one step ahead of us. So we have to start our thinking in a different way. How they are working it to getting the information. That is one part. Apart from this tabletop exercises, we should have a strong backup strategy in your BCP DR strategy at your organization. So you will be able to recover in case of if any incident happens in your organization. Apart from that, the incident triage should happen actually. Normally what happens in the organization, once a small incident happens, they simply close that particular incident. They don't triage with that, or they don't see that is there any relation with any other incident or any other issue which is happening in your environment. So that's the reason it takes 127 days or maybe more than that to get this done. Apart from this, to do a damage control, the roles or the task for each person who is going to handle the media or the shareholders or the employees or the customers, the step-by-step guide should be available there, and they should follow that. Even if one of the incident happened at one location, you should be able to quickly isolate that particular location from rest of the world. So at least you will be able to protect your crown jewels or the clear area. Apart from this, I see there is a shortage of people resources also. There is a skill lacking is there. But now most of the institutes started giving the privacy or including the security practices in their curriculum, which will reduce that. But apart from this, which I believe we should bring the people from the business side also, because normally we don't understand the business or the concept of the business where that particular solution is working or not. So these guys will help us to do that. The bad things are happening here, so we will not be able to detect that. So with these guys we will be able to quickly detect these things. So these are the 2 points which I wanted.
Thank you very much. Aloke, would like your comments.
Sure. So, see, like I said, tabletop exercises using a standard framework like NIST 61R2, those are standard. But where I think the most important element comes in is the basics. If you look at the frameworks what are available, and the one I am referring, most of you know NIST. So insights, prevent, then detect, then respond and recover. It follows a particular order. Now it's extremely important, like from insights perspective, that's where certain comes in. Sharing of information. Make sure that you're listening to information coming in. And I think most of the organizations over here, my colleagues and all would know, there's a lot of certain that, information sharing that happens, and similarly there are a lot of other organizations who share information. So that's from the insights perspective. We should make sure that the organization is listening to the information that's getting shared and taking preventative action. So through insights you prevent, so that you are able to take actions on time. It could be as simple as blocking certain IPs on firewall or URLs on proxy or so on and so forth. So that's the prevention part I would suggest. Then comes detection. Make sure that the organization has got some detection mechanism, like certain talks about retention of logs. Why so? Because then if you have to go back investigate, there is something that you can go against. Alright, so again these are fundamentals in terms of having detection technologies, making use of it. Alright, and then like Kishan was talking about responding, recovering, resiliency, all those fundamentals. But what is very important is testing this out. Alright, so a lot of organizations, what they do is they, without letting the internal teams know, do a red teaming, alright, a simulation exercise and all. So the whole idea is, whichever is a small security team in your organization, or what we suggest is make sure that there is a random exercise that happens during an annual period, and this all should be part of the CSRP plan. Alright, there should be tabletop, there should be maybe some red teaming activity which should happen maybe on an annual basis or on an ad hoc basis, so that the detection capabilities, the response capabilities are well tested. On top of that, I would also recommend like the participation of this executive team in the organization which has to face media, like Dr. Sriram was talking about. HR, media, PR, all of them should definitely participate in tabletop. It is not limited to just the technical people. It has to be extended to the business team. It has to be extended to the entire CISO community of the organization, the decision makers. Only then the organization can be very agile and can go to the next level. So that would be my feedback.
Excellent. I think among us we've covered a number of points which are good takeaways for the audience, I hopefully. Yeah, we would like to hear from you also at the end. So the last round of questions to deal with the future. what does it look like? Given now that the threat landscape is evolving, okay, the scale and sophistication of threats are increasing by the day. There are malwares with 16 layers of deception built, okay, which are there. In fact, there are malwares which would know that if it is originated in China, it would not activate itself there. It knows which geography it is in. It knows whether it's in a test environment or in production environment, and it would activate itself only when it is in production. Okay, they have become very, very, very sophisticated, right? So it knows it can wait underneath, it can replicate itself. Yeah, lateral movement, all of these are there. So of course, too much to discuss in a short discussion, but basically automation is an imperative, okay? Without automation, by the time you detect it somewhere in the wee hours of the night, and then by the time you analyze it in the morning, your entire network and everything is compromised off, right? So automatically things need to be responded to. So that is one. Second thing is to establish what is normal and what is not normal. If you're looking for needle in a haystack, some abnormal activity is happening, you need to have the intelligence. That means there should be machine learning to establish baselines on what is normal, okay? And then only you will know what is abnormal. So that is one thing. And of course, the standard practices which are there, the bread and butter, they're like have multi-factor authentication, patch again, okay, and then have a very good strong DR strategy, okay. All of these things are there, and then do tabletop exercises, constant awareness, and all of these, and constantly think of upgrading through tools and technologies. So people, process, technologies. To that we would add a fourth pillar, which is intelligence. You need to have strong intel, which is there. So these are all the, I should say, are becoming imperative. So what are your views on what the future looks like? Sorry. Yeah.
So, as somebody was pointing out, the threat landscape is increasing. Now everything is moving out of our on-prem, and it is going to cloud. And so we don't have the control or visibility as we are having when we are on-prem. So with the advancement of technology, I think with the adventure of this AI and ML, I think the future is going to be more positive, I feel. Whatever threats we are facing, a lot of threat intelligence we are getting from multiple sources. So using that, using the new technology, that AI and ML, I think things will be going in a positive direction, and things will brought under the control. However, human factor will be there. We cannot avoid the human factor. This is the weakest link, getting to be weakest link in the chain. So we need to be aware of our roles and responsibilities. Security should be a culture. It should not be a somebody's job. It should be everybody's thought process. Security should be imbibed in our basic thinking. That is a main requirement. Then I think we can have some control on this cyber threat. That's what my feeling. With AI and ML, we can achieve that.
Yeah. Yes, hopefully so. And one can't be foolhardy thinking that I've put in all measures in place that will be perfectly safe, even though it's the most expensive solution. And also has to have resilience to say that if that something happens, then I need to be prepared for it also, and then get back on my feet. And it has to be, we have to be resilient. Not only do we have to be resilient, but we'll ensure that the key assets are not lost, like he was mentioning, crown jewels and all. Maybe you'll suffer damage in some areas, but that's not going to bring down the organization or its reputation. Yeah, Neeraj, like your comment.
So as the things are changing, I think now the boundaries that this is a manufacturing organization or this is an IT organizations have completely diminished. Even a manufacturing unit is these days digital, and it's on cyber using clouds. So practically every organization is IT, every organization uses cyber. And the successful organizations, in my view, in future would be those which implement security by design at the core. It can't be that, okay, this is what we do best, this is my business idea, my business idea is great, and then I have a team of cyber professional who will make sure that they keep my business secure. I don't think that model will be the model which will work in future. At the core of the business model, we should have security. So security culture right from the top, I think it was around 30 years back when the CISO position started really reappearing, appearing on the domain of CXO positions. In future, in the board of each of organization, whether it is small or big, security would be a key member of the business strategy. Right from top to bottom, the security culture should be there, not just with respect to the trainings, with respect to how do I do my business taking care of security. So we have DevSecOps. Every developer needs to know security. Every person who is doing a business, who is taking a business calls in operations, they need to know what kind of data they are managing and how do I protect, what is the relevance of this data, what are the information security practices that I need to implement. Nowadays, in the last 2.5 years disruption, the digitalization has reached to schools. So in fact, the security education should start at schools. If every user, as we were discussing over lunch, even a Telewala is using new technology in the Zoom call we were discussing, we are using collaboration tools, we are using financial payments. So practically everyone is using cyber security, cyber. So everyone should also know how to be safe. And when we know in our personal spaces how to be safe, we will also be implementing it in our professional space. So security as a culture, and then building resiliency again in our systems, using all the technologies, AI, ML to get those intelligence. Security by layer, the Swiss cheese methodology, I feel is very strong. None of the methods that we have been discussing throughout the day in last 1.5 day would be saying that, okay, I provide 100% foolproof mechanism to provide you safety. But when we put it in layers, at the end of it, I can say this can protect my assets and this can protect my information. And then that needs to continue to evolve as the threat actors are working on the most advanced technologies. These days, longer plans, like 5-year plans, I don't think that makes sense. Technology changes things so fast. So what we are talking about today might be very soon obsolete, and we might be replacing it with a newer technology. So continuous learning for all of us in whatever role we do is very important. Cybersecurity is no more just a domain for information security professionals. It is something that anyone who needs to do, even if you are teaching in a school, you are in healthcare, you are in a bank, everyone needs to know that.
Thank you so much. Yes, would like to hear from you, Kishan.
Two to three things again I want to say. One is with respect to the information sharing. Normally, any incident happen in any organization, they don't share that information with anyone. It's nobody wants to share that information, saying my name, my company's name will become a bad in that. Then there will be impact on the organization. So there should be an anonymous way where we can share this information with all other industries. Maybe a similar industry, or maybe across the industry, which normally doesn't happen. That should be the future of incident response plan. So that way, means you'll seeing a thing by 10 people and 1,000 people, there will be always be a difference there. So if I am correct, around 2017, I have seen first time in Indian history, there was a news flashed on TV saying that ransomware attacks are happening in the industry. So that is the starting point where organizations started getting importance from the business or from the board, saying that there is security is an important thing required for an organization. So and then as you rightly mentioned, we should the business should involve security starting from the inception days only itself. Otherwise, normally a business comes at the last moment saying that we wanted to make it live, please do it in one day, otherwise we'll be blah blah blah, he will give stories and all these things. So they should start involved into that. So I just like to quote one thing: why do we Ferraris have the brakes? Is anybody is able to answer? Why do we have the Ferraris brakes? So people will say that so they can brake and everything. So normally what I answer is so they can go faster and faster. Cybersecurity is like a brakes in Ferrari. So the business, Ferrari is a business and cybersecurity is a brakes. So the business can go faster and faster. So normally they say that security is a hurdle to go in that way. But means you have to convince that the business saying that we are doing this important. The incident response will play means awareness, the skill sets. The one more thing which I see is security consolidation needs to happen. Otherwise, every company will have 5 to 20 different technologies deployed in their environment. They don't share information with each other. We have to leverage the SIM kind of solutions or any SOAR kind of solutions which will do the correlation to you and then you will go there. So that they also should start sharing the information with each other. And then one more thing which I would like to say, you should not go ahead and start mitigating everything in there. Whatever the vulnerabilities which are exploitable, only you should concentrate on that. So you will be able to control many things there.
Yes. Aloke.
Sure. So very interesting discussion actually, and so information sharing, I mean extending to the point that Kishan was talking about, I think that's where the Indian government has taken the first initial steps out in exchanging, sharing information. Alright, so let's see how it goes, but I'm pretty certain that if I look at the future from India perspective and future from domain perspective, certain steps is in the right direction, like I said. And in addition, see, if we have to learn something, I mean, we should learn from other mistakes and whatsoever is happening in the wild, right? So around 2017-18, the example you took, I think around the same time, big major attack that happened was Equifax. I think all of us know about it. What has happened is, and I have spent a lot of time in terms of studying that and then the repercussions and all. So if I have to look at the future of security, I would say that has been one of the key turning milestone, where before and after their executive reports, annual reports, has now got a line item on cybersecurity. Post that, it has become a boardroom discussion. Alright, most of the organizations now, if you look at some of the developed countries and all, they have got cybersecurity in their annual report. How much is the spend? In fact, that is one of the items now they are contemplating, is now known, and because of which some APT groups know which one to attack because their spend is lower. Alright, so they kind of try to mix it up with IT and all, and then don't showcase the numbers. But then being on this side of the table, we do get that information a lot of time. And all I can tell you is, it is going to be boardroom discussion. It is going to be one of the pertinent discussions. It may become part of the annual reports that the shareholders would like to know. That the company I'm investing in, the shares should not tank because of the brand damage and the reputations it may have in case of a major ransomware or a cyber attack that may go, right? So this is something also directly linked to the cyber insurance they pay. So all these are external major factors which have to be taken into account. It is no longer an inbound in isolation activity, but it is more like a big activity at the organization CXO level that has to happen. Alright, so we need to take care of that. At the same time, when we look at the future, it has to be all in context of business, whatever the organization is doing business and what domain they are in. Alright, so again, it needs to get linked to the business. That is something I have always observed. And seen that it does not get linked to the business. Supply chain attack, somebody may think that I am not part of supply chain, but then you could be small, but then you are a supplier or you are associated with a big entity, and that way you could be used to attack somebody else without you even coming to know. All right. So that is one lesson that we should learn maybe out in the last 2 years, how supply chain attacks have got proliferated across different industries. So all that combined together, I think that's how the future of CSRP or the cybersecurity one should put together. So at a brief.
Thank you for those insights. Yes, with technologies galloping at an unprecedented pace and work from home with boundaryless organizations, business models changing, new regulations coming in, and the competitive landscape for every business changing heavily. Okay, looks like a perfect storm, in fact, that one is caught in as far as security is concerned. But one has to pay heed. First of all, one must understand where one is and what are all the things that one could get exposed to. For example, if you have IoT, then that's another area you should consider, that threat landscape, threat attack surface. So one has to gather all of those and see how to protect one's crown jewels. Also have a robust and well-tested incident response plan in place, and in which automation, governance, risk, compliance, all this should play a very key role. Okay, awareness is key. People, process, technologies, all of them are important. And having good relationship with your security vendors, considering outsourcing, managed security services where expertise is not sufficient is perfectly all right. Things moving to cloud, that is also good, because then you don't have to manage all the things that we should be managing, because the complexity of the stack is growing by the day. And if you're having development organizations, then DevSecOps plays an important role, because you need to have automated tools there that they don't sneak in. And of course, in Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, we worked on with companies also, in which automatic secure configuration is there. Okay, that means by secure configuration, they attach a lot of importance to that. It's not that some system admin operations have happened and some ports are left loose, or they have brought in a server in which just the default configuration, which is insecure, is being used. So there is something that monitors, again, as I said, automation, and then fixes those security configuration loopholes also. So with these excellent insights from everyone, thank you very much to the panelists. I'd like to conclude this session. Any questions? We may be able to take 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you for this interesting talk. I hope I'm audible. I really liked the point where you spoke about simulation and the importance of simulation and testing of your crisis management plan and incident response plan. But my question is, how effective are such simulation exercises and tabletop exercises as compared to the real event? Like some of the examples Sriram said is the DRS is neutralized first. The attack happens on a Friday night or on a long weekend. So as compared to the real deal, how effective are these simulation exercises?
Okay, so, I mean, like in the real world, if you were to say, what is the protection for a human being or human life? Can you provide Z category security to everyone? And even if Z category security is provided, prime ministers, there are instances of their being assassinated. Okay, so this will only, what you call, discourage or make it harder, okay, and make it unattractive, while you are protecting your assets. So if an incident has happened, already there has been breach happening. That's where we are. So there are the other sessions there for the defense part and all, but it has to be in response to, it has to be commensurate with the amount of damage that can be caused, right? Whether you buy cyber insurance or employ measures in place, say to secure this building, for example, how much would you put in there? How much will you invest? So that depends on, that's why it has to be a sensible, well thought out business decision. Would any of my panelists like to comment here?
Yeah.
Good.
See, my answer is very simple. You must have prepared for exams, whether it is IIT, CAT, you must have prepared using mock tests. That's the answer. I mean, like, as simple as like you have to do something. You cannot be unprepared and directly go and sit in the exam. I can tell you when the situation rubber hits the road, because I'm on this side of the table, I can tell you the kind of emotions, the kind of chaos, the kind of crisis that happens. Because before tabletop and after tabletop, I've seen the difference. At least people know, all right, where to look, who is the decision maker, all right, what protocol to follow. It is a big difference. Until you don't give those mock tests, it is only academics.
I would like to just add one more point. Depending on how critical your assets are, what level of testing you want to do, that's also a business decision. You can do it, the test as close to the real life scenario, but that would certainly be costly. And in some scenarios, that's also is done by organization, but obviously that would be expensive. So you have to find a good balance, completely not being prepared to exactly be able to do it like a disaster, national disaster level situation. You have seen some of those preparation or drills going on. The organizations, depending on how much is their budget, how much is the risk appetite they have, they choose something in between.
They will make you how you are prepared for an incident plan if something happens.
Yeah.
So you can correct your mistakes, or you can modify the plan what needs to be done, where we are lacking. So these are the benefits of doing the simulation.
Yeah. Someone else had a question. Yeah.
Sir, Sriram sir, as you have mentioned, in any incident response, people practice technology, and then technology means tools, and then you have added intelligence, threat intel. These four factors definitely make the threat incident response as a critical aspect. As Ramesh sir mentioned, people become most critical or factor in making this process. They could be a weak link. So now organizations should they look at complete on-prem response team, or they should look at an hybrid or an outsourced model where an MSSP brings in the required skill set with team monitoring and with a proper response team. So organizations should look at what kind of model going forward. This is my first question. My second question is the tools and technologies. Nowadays what is happening because of Make in India, the options are limited to the PSU banks. So is there anything that DSCI is taking initiative with the government? These are my two questions. Thank you.
So, well, several questions there. I'll try and very quickly answer. Is DSCI doing with the government? Yes, of course. Please do attend the other sessions and all. So, government is constantly consulting us, right, from privacy laws to the cyber laws to everything. And we are in at the central level, state level and all that. That is there. Please do read the DSCI advisories. As somebody was mentioning that please follow the DSCI advisories to lead happy, healthy lives. Okay. But the point is, the thing is that please understand the whole basis of these questions, and any decision to be taken has to be a well thought out decision at the board level, of course, and it's driven from top down. And anything that you, whether it's an investment you make or the way you assess risks or so. See, if it comes down to risks, there are essentially three components. One is the threat landscape. To take an analogy of some pandemic or something going on, if there is that particular disease very widespread and it is very contagious, the nature of that disease, then of course everybody is at greater threat. That's number one. Number two is your own vulnerability. That means of the 100 people here, probably some will get affected more. Number three is the impact. Is that disease fatal? Will it kill, or is it like some flu that will come and go away? So these three will play a role in assessing your risks and your strategy. Some organizations may be more vulnerable, may be blown off. If they really have so much sensitive data and that is all exposed, then they are subject to huge fines, regulatory penalties, reputation damage. Their entire business may go. People never trust that again. On the other hand, I mean, threats-wise, one is very not vulnerable in that respect, and you've been working on a robust plan, or these threats don't affect them, then they are more safe, right? Similarly with the threats themselves, if you have what kind of your threat landscape are you exposed to? Are you very public-facing, B2C? Are you B2B? Are you holding a lot of that kind of personal data, private confidential data? What is it? What are the kind of transactions you're doing? Where will you strengthen it? That is very important. And then the impact. In case this particular thing goes wrong, what is it going to be? Do I have damage controls in place? How do I recover? All this, how much is the loss that I can suffer? All these are factors which are unique to your situation. You need to evaluate. It is very hard to make out or prescribe one solution fits all, right? So that is there. I hope these pointers have been good. We really must wrap up now. Yeah. That's true. Absolutely.
Which is actually into a different domain. I mean, so their business is different, and they start getting into MSSP thing. It'll be quite difficult. You may not have the same skill set.
Correct.
On top, MSSP itself may have a skill gap. So how can we say that companies who are into a different domain, maybe in textile, maybe in manufacturing, will have expertise in that? So I would say that it's better to give it to them who can do it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that especially holds for smaller businesses, SMBs and MSMEs and all, who may not have the expertise or to build at all. They may move to cloud, they may actually outsource a lot of these functions.
Exactly.
But something has to be done. I agree with one point strongly made here, that security by design and privacy by design is something that we've been strongly advocating. It cannot be built in as an afterthought or retrofitted off somehow, and there will be consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.